Hello, this is TelecomTV. I'm Martin Warwick. We are in Phoenix in Arizona at the ETSI NFV conference meeting number 8 of a long series. This is number 8 and 9 is coming up, and it's an important meeting because it's significant in as far as it's the end of phase 1 of the development of NFV, the informative phase, and it's moving on now, yesterday in fact, to the beginning of phase 2, which is the normative phase. And I'm talking with Francois-Frederic, who is the VP of Business Development with 6Wind.
Hi, Martin.
Francois-Frederic, welcome. I'd like to begin by talking about this change of phase within NFV. In your opinion, NFV... No, let me do that again. I'll pick up on that. Francois-Frederic, I'd like to talk to you to begin with about this change of phase for NFV. Do you think, given the fact that NFV has come from nowhere in less than 2 years to be a very important part of the networks of the future, do you think that the first phase succeeded and met your expectations, or did it exceed them?
Well, it's in fact really very important goal that was set to make sure that the industry, the telecom industry, can move to a virtualized environment. The challenge was great. I think we met most of the challenges, and we have now a sound foundation on how we will build and create real deployments for a virtualized infrastructure. That said, nothing is perfect, and we lacked a strong architecture group that would have filled in all the working groups with main important points that have to be shared by all groups. We have been working a little bit in like silos, and that has been recognized, so that it's a real topic for phase 2, that we don't recreate that that lack of global guidance.
Okay, thank you. Now, one of the things I have noted down here is one of the things that's being carried forward is NFV portability challenges. So we're talking here about COTS and commodity servers and so on. The architectural framework of NFV, in fact, and the emergence of an abstraction layer. Why is that a problem?
This has been a problem, let's say, for phase 1, as most people concentrated on making things run and have things done, try to do a first step of NFV. Now, they have used some kind of shortcuts and created some dependencies of network hardware or some hardware here and there. So this means that it defeats the very goal of virtualization, which is the network function should be totally independent from the hardware, from how and where it is deployed. So that was the basis also of our contributions, not just on performance, but on this VNF portability and other topics like live migration from one server to the other one. So portability is raising challenges because today it's done at the expense of performance. So 6Wind provides a set of solutions to have both performance and portability, but we are the leaders and the only one for the moment on the market to really provide that type of service. So portability is actually a topic for a number of work items in phase 2 regarding many different aspects of portability.
Is it also an interoperability issue?
Unfortunately, yes. Too bad.
Yeah.
So once we get that thing solved, I guess we'll also address in the same process the interoperability aspects, or some of them actually.
Mm-hmm. And this, I take it, is also bound up with the entire notion, again, which NFV is predicated upon, of openness.
Exactly. And openness has been defined a number of times, and I will add on top of those definitions, based on experience, where a number of open protocols or open platforms, etc., have defined a set of potential extensions so that vendors can create extensions. But we should also define some kind of open specification so that if a vendor creates an addition to an open standard, it should also provide some kind of specification so that other vendors can interoperate with their extensions and rather to avoid lock-in to their own solution.
Okay, thank you. Let's get down into some technical detail then, if we might. Let's begin with 6Wind. For those people out there who are watching this who don't know what you do, tell us what you do.
We're selling software components. Traditionally, we sell those components to network equipment providers all over the world. If you're using data in, let's say, in Japan, there are probably 100% that your data flows through 6Wind software through the different OEMs we have over there. So that's our main business, to sell to network equipment providers. That said, since the NFV or virtualization, data center virtualization and NFV are really taking on the market, we are selling directly to network operators, or we are selling to companies like HP or like Dell, so that they extend their solution with 6Wind building blocks. We also work with, let's say, large internet names that have specific needs. You know, if you look at a company like, I should not say any name here, but a company that has a lot of video traffic coming out.
Right.
If we can accelerate their system and make sure that it's 17 times faster or 17 times more efficient, this has an influence on the bottom line. So those are also new customers for us in China, in the US, in Europe, where we sell those technologies. It's not products here, that's just enabling technologies.
I understand. So tell us then, Francois-Frederic, about the 6Wind vSwitch and the other products that 6Wind brings out in detail, and how does it help the CSP advance NFV in their environment?
So let me clarify one point, Martin.
Of course.
We are not selling a vSwitch, because that would mean we would have a product.
Right.
And there are a number of companies selling vSwitch.
Indeed.
There. And they probably take an open vSwitch and then modify it and make a product out of it.
Mm-hmm.
We think that's not the right way of doing things. We provide transparent acceleration of virtual networking. It can be the the whole IP stack of the hypervisor,
mm-hmm.
or it can be let's say the VM to VM communication, or VM access to the network. So we are not creating a product that is completely that replaces a virtual switch, but it complements an installed virtual switch so that it accelerates its operations. Bottom line, we expect that we have a 10 times acceleration factor of both the routing and the switching. Routing is also important because vSwitch is traditionally limited to layer 2 activities. Well, it's important when you have a VM on one server and another one on another server, you have the complete path accelerated, not just the VM access to the network.
Sure.
So that's why we say we don't have a vSwitch, but we're accelerating the whole network environment of the hypervisor domain.
Okay, that's clear. So let's talk about the integration challenges then between the various components of a platform, whatever it may be, whether it's vSwitches, OpenStack, the operating system,
Yes.
whatever, that your 6Wind solution rather than product, shall we say, help resolve and provide a carrier class sort of TCP stack with performance for NFV workloads?
So here I heard two different topics. I heard TCP and I heard the virtual acceleration. So those are two different topics, and combined, it's an extremely powerful value proposition. So let's assume you're a CDN provider, and you want to get rid of your let's say hardware contingencies. You want to rent resources from different service providers all around the world. So what you want to have is one single virtual machine that can be instantiated on any kind of virtual environment without having any specific requirements on that environment. So that's the point of view of the CDN provider. On the other side, the network operator wants to host as many CDN providers it wants so that it satisfies its own customers.
Yep.
So this means that there are integration challenges in the fact that the dependencies I mentioned for phase one really make that thing a problem. So this will be addressed in phase two. From a standard perspective, now that's the six-win business to make sure that there are no integration problems between all those CDN providers going to the same network operator infrastructure. We make sure that they use plain vanilla Linux installations. They don't require a specific vSwitch. They don't require a specific thing to work. We will be accelerating what's being installed in the network operator side. As we announced with our partner HP, very game-changing capabilities for CDN providers, but it also has impacts in storage and other domains. But so TCP, when you combine this performance acceleration on the TCP side with the virtual acceleration, you can move from a dedicated hardware with hardware load balancer and a bunch of servers to a fully virtualized solution that can be even more powerful, utilizing 6 times less hardware. So yes, that's a value proposition from a real hard dollars.
Okay, thank you. Now you just mentioned the fact that you're in strategic partnership with HP. Can you tell us more about the relationship, and tell us in particular about how you benchmark with HP on your solutions and the performance of those solutions, and how does that then in turn help the communication service providers?
That's indeed a very good question. And most operators, that might be also a low-hanging fruit for them to deploy virtualized services, virtualized offering towards the world, and probably MVNOs are very good targets. MVNOs are very sensitive to cost, so it's a perfect fit. They will probably want to have, from the network operator standpoint, to be able to squeeze in one single server as many MVNOs they can. So this means that you will have to have, let's say, localized service chains providing maybe 2, 3, 4 VMs that are connected in a service chain in a server. You might want to have more of those service chains in a server. What's important here is that in NFV Phase 1, we covered a lot of, let's say, ways to accelerate networking for virtual machines, and one of it is still SRV. SRV is a way to actually bypass the hypervisor and talk directly to the network. So it looks a really great acceleration technique for virtual networking. It is actually for certain workloads. But for the service chains here, whereby you have very high bandwidth service chain, we're talking about 30 gigabit. If we want to have, let's say, a Wi-Fi public MVNO, you will have probably 30 gigabit of traffic coming in and out of this service chain. So leveraging SROV to do that is actually not possible on a single server, because you have to add a number of cards to do the actual access to the network. It's counterintuitive because everybody thinks it's accelerating. It is, but not this type of workload.
Right.
And the core limiting factor is the actual PCI Express bandwidth, which is available to those cards. So bottom line, if you want to have a 30 gigabit or 40 gigabit service chain on a network, you can't build that one on a single server. You need multiple servers. If you use software switching, it's not just about 6-win solution, it's an architectural decision. If you use software switching, you have the capacity of having 2 service chains in a single server. So this is pretty significant.
Thank you. Now, we've seen towards the end of phase 1 proofs of concept, POCs, spreading around the world, being demonstrated in various places. What do you think it will take for the communication service providers to move from that notion of the POC actually to producing field trials, which is, of course, precedes commercial deployment of NFV?
Right. It will really depend on the use case. Some use case, I can't comment on what our network equipment vendors, OEMs, are doing. They might have already deployed large scale, so I can't comment on that.
Well, we know there are some commercial deployments out there,
Right.
but they tend not to be very big yet.
Yes. That said, in the next coming month, we have direct customers that will roll out large-scale applications. So they are typically not applications that change fundamentally their infrastructure, but it's more an incremental business on top of the existing infrastructure. So you might want to have for the enterprise what some call smart needs. So that means you have a switch with virtual machines, or the opposite. You have on the provider edge, you have let's say the aggregator of customers, but at the same time you can have virtual machines located there, and that's the perfect place where to put the downlink traffic control. Now, when an enterprise wants to limit the number of to control the YouTube traffic, for example, the only way you can do it is to place a traffic control solution on the provider edge. If you do that on the enterprise premises, that's too late. The video has been already transferred. So those are the things that can be done as an incremental business. The CDN also, so it's kind of new not new, but the model of virtualized CDN and renting those resources to CDN providers is a new business, but it can be pretty significant. And lately you have also some applications that are, let's say, virtual CPE. It might not be virtualization as you can find in what we're describing today with ETSI NFV Phase 1. But one of the proposal of Orange and other large operators is to actually go into more details on non-hypervisor based virtualization. And that's a pretty significant way of rolling out real world large scale services very soon.
A final question to you. We go back to HP again. Why is your partnership with HP so valuable to you both and to the CSPs as you work together to address this NFV opportunity?
HP has organized itself, creating a business unit for NFV, so that's a very attractive partner for that. But they also have a very long-time relationship with network operators and selling them a lot of services, integration services. They are used to integrate softwares and hardware from different vendors to provide a single solution to network operators. So it has been very easy to work with them.
Francois-Frederic, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Martin.